Wonderful. Can everyone see the screen? Yes. Awesome. And so please use the chat box as well if you need to chat to us. So I can see some of you are doing that. Fantastic. Great. So I'm just going to grab my notes. So welcome, everyone. Really, really great to see you. This is our first kickoff call. And I'll just give you a really quick introduction because it's been a long time since Singapore. So firstly, welcome. And you'll be able to see Audrey in the side as well. So the Gender Empower program, as you all know, is part of the Frontier Incubators program, which is the second part of the bigger Scaling Frontier Innovators program. And the Scaling Frontier Innovators program, as we know, was created by the Australian Government, Department of Foreign Exchange and Trade, who we refer to as DFAT, to test market-led approaches to accelerating innovation for the development of impact. So through this work, and we're very fortunate that our government has actually recognised that they need to be more strategic and intentional in their approaches to recognising gender and power dynamics. So that's why we're here today. So the Gender and Power theme actually came out of the Frontier Incubators work, and especially in the Frontier Incubators workshop that we were at in Singapore. So, and that was in November, and it's been about 3 months or just over that until we're here today. So that's a really great starting point. And I just wanted to touch on why it's actually important to look at gender and power in social entrepreneurship. But I think what we'll do is, like what we did in Singapore, just to get everyone on the same page, because it's been a bit of time, is we'll go through a few housekeeping things, and we're actually going to start with a beautiful video as well. So just general housekeeping. Please put yourself on mute when you're not speaking. Select a gallery view in the top right-hand corner so you can see everyone's faces, for those of you who are sharing your screen. Feel free to type questions into the chat function, as you know, at the bottom of the screen. And please note that the call is being recorded. Actually, I don't know if it is. Yeah, it is. So if you have any issues with that, do let us know. Otherwise, we can, if we need to, we can pause the recording as well. So we're just going to kick off with a really short video. So I'll just put that on now.
Gender inequality doesn't make sense on any level. By marginalizing the rights of women, we deny ourselves the opportunity to lift millions of men, women, and children out of poverty, not to mention the chance of a just and fair world. From birth, girls and boys, women and men are expected by society to play certain roles and behave in certain ways based on traditions, religion, and other beliefs. These behaviors are learned and shape the gender norms in a society. Unfortunately, in many countries, gender norms create disadvantages for women. Often, girls are not sent to school. When they become women, they then have limited ability to earn money or realize their potential. Rural women play a major role in agricultural development. However, in many developing countries, women cannot formally own land. Without land, they cannot get loans to invest in their farms or businesses. This also means they have no control over the use of land or the benefits that come from it. Men generally control the household decisions, like how to use the family's assets. These disadvantages are often reinforced by practices that limit women's access to services, like training. Cultural beliefs can also restrict women's opportunities, such as in parts of Zambia where women cannot paddle their boats as it is considered bad omen. The result of these issues? Women remain poor, and agricultural production cannot reach its potential, perpetuating poverty and hunger in the developing world. The social norms that limit women's opportunities need to be understood and then changed. By taking a gender transformative approach, we can influence social norms and bridge the gaps in access to resources and services between men and women in a lasting manner. Change is needed on many levels, and both men and women must be involved for it to happen. Research and development organizations need to invest in programs that promote gender equality alongside improving productivity and incomes. Policies need to be implemented that increase women's access to services and resources. Communities need to support women as farmers and as leaders. Increasing women's voice and agency is a valuable end in its own right. When development organizations, policies, and communities support the success of women, we have a chance to reduce extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity for girls and boys, women and men around the world.
Great. Fantastic. So look, hope you enjoyed the video. This was one of the ones I wanted to show in Singapore, and we didn't get around to it because it became a really active session. And so that's absolutely fine. So we wanted to use this opportunity to show the video today. So once again, hello, we'll go through the agenda first so you guys know what to expect today. And I guess, you know, as a heads up as well, this thematic might be quite different to some of the other thematics that you might be part of. We want it to be quite interactive, especially for this call, because this is really about learning about what your needs are. And then following on from that, we can tell you about the structure that's going on with all the other ones. So it's not just about Audrey and myself talking to you or at you, especially for this one. We would really love for you to interact and ask questions. And we're actually going to give you time within the session to work through some of the issues and concepts that we're talking about. So if you ever want to, I can see all of you are on mute, just turn your mute off and I can see that, and you know, do speak up. You're more than welcome to. So the first thing we'll do is we'll have slight quick introductions. I know most of you would know myself, and I'd love to introduce you to Audrey, and then a couple of minutes for everyone on this call as well. It'd be great to know about who you are and what you do, and why in particular you're interested in this thematic, because it is a very different type of approach. It's very new, so it'd be great to understand that. We'll give you an overview of the whole thematic program because it's going over a few months and there's quite a few elements. You will obviously have access to this particular PowerPoint, so don't feel you have to write down everything in this PowerPoint. You have access to that, but we'll go through what everything means, what you can expect out of the program. And at this point, we'll also ask from you what you want from us in this thematic as well. We'll do a quick recap of what we did in Singapore, because I know we covered a lot very, very quickly. And then we go into the needs assessment, and that's really looking at if you have anything really pressing you want to talk about today, or you want us to work with you in the next week or so, that's the time we're going to do that. And you know, we want to bring this all together at the end and work out how we're actually going to work together. Can you see the chat box, Audrey? Any questions? Great. So I'm just going to start with a quick recap of who I am, and most of you know that. So I am the CEO of YGAP, and I have been for, it'll be a year in May this year, so not long to go. And YGAP, as you know, we are an intermediary ourselves. We run an accelerator program across Africa, Southeast Asia, Pacific, and in Australia. And we have a very strong focus on all aspects of gender, and it's something that we've been working really hard on in the last year. But over the last 3 years, we've actually got, as you guys will all know, an accelerator dedicated for female founders. As we were doing that work, we recognized that it's great to have an accelerator that's designed by women for women, but there's so many other elements around gender and power that we were missing, and that's why we came to this. So we're very committed, even from board level down, to this gender and power work. And we hope to bring that to you guys as well, and really learn from you. And that's something we talked about before. So how did YGAP come into this, and how did my role come into this? Well, during all our discussions, YGAP was actually selected to present the sessions on gender and power during the sessions in Singapore. Leading on from that, and leading from all the feedback that all of you and other people in the workshop in Singapore contributed, we saw that there was a big need, and that's why this thematic actually grew out of that, which is fantastic. We've also been selected as part of Frontier Incubators to lead the GLIA Toolkit, the Gender Lens Incubation and Acceleration Toolkit, which is a brand new piece of work, and it's really exciting, and Audrey is leading on that, so I'll get her to talk to you about that. But during this thematic, it's all about us connecting with you. Audrey and myself will be your key contacts, and you have full access to us whenever you need. So based on that, I'll now hand over to Audrey.
Thanks, Manita. Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey, and I'm the Program Manager for Impact at YGAP. So my role spans across all of the gender and power work that we deliver, and this includes this thematic, where I'll be supporting Manita in designing and delivering all of the webinars, the seminars, and the one-on-one sessions. As Manita mentioned, we're also, as part of Frontier Incubators, doing a really exciting project to develop a gender lens in incubation and acceleration toolkit, which I will talk to you a little bit more about in a few slides, because there's a lot of ways that you can get involved in that as well. As part of my work at YGAP, I also work on and facilitate our YHO programs, which Manita just mentioned. There are female-focused accelerator programs, and we run them in Africa, Bangladesh, and in the South Pacific. I was particularly in love with running the pilot that we did in the South Pacific in Fiji last year, just because I'm personally from New Caledonia, and it was just such a great experience to see how I could use my skills that I've developed in my career to be able to go back to the region that I consider home and actually have an impact there. And it was really interesting to see how, even if you do accelerators and incubators in Australia or in Asia or in Africa, it's very different when you need to contextualize it to the South Pacific environment. So a lot of learnings from that, and I'll be happy to share learnings from my YHO as well as we go through this program. As I'm only just meeting all of you, I just wanted to give a little bit more background on myself as well. So over the past 5 years, I've just been in and around accelerator and incubator programs. So just establishing, managing, and delivering them and assisting them. And that's mainly in Australia, but also a little bit in Asia and a bit in Africa as well. So I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and in the very early stages, it was more with early stage technology ventures. And then I transitioned towards the social enterprise space, just because I think if you're going to build a scalable, sustainable business, I'd like it to also have a positive impact in the world. So that's me, and I'm just very excited to be part of this thematic, and can't wait to work with all of you over the next few months, and look forward to what we can create together. Yeah.
Thanks, Audrey. And we would love to now throw it to whoever is on the call. So yeah, just turn your mic. And we've got a few questions, like if you need some guiding questions of how you can introduce yourself. We didn't want to put you on the spot. We know it can be quite intimidating sometimes. And Ian will go first. Thank you, Ian.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. My name is Ian Fisk. I'm with the Mentor Capital Network and a partner with the Frontier Incubators in a variety of ways. I'm mostly here to observe and learn today. So that'll be all for me for now.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, Shankalita.
Hi, I'm Sankalita Shom. I'm from Toru Institute of Inclusive Innovation, and I had the good fortune of being in Singapore, where Monita conducted a very energizing and participative session in Singapore. And I think that was the point when I started getting interested in this, because I like the fact that we are talking intentionally about gender and power rather than talking about it in spurts or just by the way kind of a thing. So I'm interested in I'm part of the session because I really want to know how to make gender inclusion as part of the entire program. For example, beginning from recruitment to programming, to the entire way that you conduct your programs. In fact, yesterday we announced our top 10 members of the cohort, and we just have one woman entrepreneur out there. So so that's another area that I think we need to intentionally work on, sort of working with women entrepreneurs as an accelerator. Yes, and we are always based out of Bangladesh. We are based in Dhaka out of Bangladesh. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, Manita. Just checking. I mean, can you guys see me?
We can't, Kazi.
Yeah. Sorry, probably my webcam is not working. So I guess I'll just give a brief introduction from my side. Hi, guys. So my name is Kazi. I work at BRAC Social Innovation Lab, to be more particular. And my expertise lies in business development. And my work is kind of like an internal business consultant here at BRAC. Before Singapore, just a very frank discussion. Before Singapore, I had little knowledge about how gender and power can be so, can be so powerful in terms of incubations context. So the sessions that you had, Manita, those were eye-opening for me, and I would just love to know more. And what Sankalita also mentioned, that in Bangladesh particularly, it's tough to find, women entrepreneur or women incubators. So that's also a program challenge, and that's also an ecosystem challenge. And I would love to, and I also had some great ideas from Singapore, but then again, from this particular program and from this particular sessions, I would like to learn more about how we can probably solve that problem. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Yeah, fantastic. And on that, a few of you have been emailing me and messaging me, and it was really difficult because there was that break. So thank you for holding on to all that energy and that intention. And this is exactly what this time is for. So thank you. Yen.
Hi, my camera finally works. So nice to see you again, Manita. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Hien. I'm the founder and CEO of WISE, the Women's Initiative for Startup and Entrepreneurship. I'm based in Hanoi, Vietnam. And because working to support women entrepreneurs are the focus of my organization. That's why the gender and power sessions at the Incubator Frontier program in Singapore has been extremely powerful to me. So that's why I'm here and really just want to learn more from you, Manita and Audrey, how to really get more knowledge and influence on the gender issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. That's really, really great. Oh, hello.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, how are you? So good to see you.
I'm good. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, hello everyone. Again, as everyone mentioned, in Singapore, we had so much to learn. I mean, the session about gender and power, it was so thought-provoking. And I mean, that's the only reason to learn more about how can we be more gender inclusive. And sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Komal. I'm from Social Innovation Lab. I work as the design and strategy lead over there. And yes, so to learn more about, I mean, we have been trying to be gender inclusive. We recently were an implementing partner of a women-centric program, but I mean, again, gender isn't about women. I mean, it's about being, taking all aspects, looking at all aspects. So yeah, so learning more about it. I'm here to learn more about it and getting as much knowledge as I can. Yeah. Thank you, Manita.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm really glad you touched on the fact that it's not about women. And, that's something that I kept going on about. And I just wanted to recognize that, the video we just showed, it did talk about just men and women, just acknowledging that. And obviously that wasn't a video that we created, but, we know as a team here that we are looking at all gendered and different gendered groups. But we just thought that was a really powerful video to bring everything together and just to get the energy going. So thanks for highlighting that. Fantastic. Great. You want to do that over here?
Hi, everyone. Just want to say hi. This is Avery. I'm joining from the Frontier Incubators team from San Francisco, and so grateful and excited to see you all joining for this thematic call. And thank you so much to Manita and Audrey for leading it.
Thanks, Avery. Good to see you.
All right, so we're just going to go through a quick overview of the program structure. I'm sure you had some documents shared with you in terms of what's going to happen, but this is just a way for us all to make sure we're on the same page and we know what's happening, what to expect at different stages of this program. So there's going to be 4 core components of the program itself, which is the needs assessment, which is what today is all about. And then there's going to be 4 webinars, 3 seminars, which will take place in between those webinars. And then you also have the option to sign up for one-on-one sessions. And we'll go a little bit more in depth about all of these options in a second. The 5th one is a toolkit, and that's the work that I was mentioning before, the Gender Lens in Incubation and Acceleration toolkit, which is separate from this thematic, but there's ways in which you might want to get involved in that, and you'll probably get some communications around the toolkit in the coming weeks. So we just want to make sure you're very clear on where that stands compared to what the thematic is doing.
Yeah, super exciting. And you know, we will talk about all of that as well. And the reason we thought it's important just to highlight that is, you know, things are happening really quickly around all of this, which is exactly what we need it to be. And the fact that you are on this call and we're looking at all of this is testament to how significant this is. So super exciting. So the needs assessment, you know, what will we actually cover today? Today is all about finding out what your most pressing needs are and what your potential concerns are around gender and power. I know in Singapore we delved quite deep really quickly in the 3 sessions that we covered, and it was you know, there was some evaluation done and people were speaking to each other, but then it kind of stopped. So, and I know those things are bubbling away in your minds and within your organizations. So today we'd love to actually bring together what are the things that are keeping you up at night, you know, around gender and power. You guys already signed up to this. It's something that you'd like to do straight away. And let's see if we can actually talk together and work on a couple of really quick, easy strategies to start implementing. And I'm going to emphasize the start, because you can actually think you're going to do something. Like you can say, I'm going to do blind selections to make sure there's no bias associated with recruitment, but then actually implementing it will take some time. But let's get our ideas together in this call today. So what can we do to address this as a group? And with Audrey and myself and everyone on the call, let's have that discussion. And again, we're actually going to give you time and space to think about these if you haven't yet. And if you have, we'll just dive straight in. We'd love to learn again what you would like to get out of the next 7 sessions. So the 4 webinars, the 3 seminars, again, it is very interactive. We will create curriculum and we will dive deep in response to what you really need. And I want to emphasize that a lot. In Singapore, you would have heard me saying no one is an expert in this. With us as well, we're coming up to just over a year we've been working on all of this. So we want to actually look at things that are important to you and make sure that we cover what is important to you both in the webinars, in the one-on-one calls, as well as giving you an overview. And then we'd like an understanding from you how you'd want these webinars and seminars to work. We obviously, Audrey and I have an idea. The thematics also are following a particular format, but do let us know if there's certain things that you want. So please do let us know. So the 4 webinars, we are going to deliver a lot of information in these webinars, but in a way that you can actually work through them. So the 4 webinars that it's going to start later in March. The first one will be to identify the needs that you have within your organization, your programming, your ecosystem, and even personally, right? And we're going to go really deep. So today is about what's been keeping you up at night. Webinar 1 is going really deep into each of those 4 or 5 pillars of work that you do. We're going to take you through the questions you need to ask and what happens when certain things come up. The second webinar, so now that you've got that, and that's going to drive you mad, because once you've got all that, we did those ideations, is what are you actually going to do to tackle these? What are the actual strategies that we're going to implement? And through this, we're actually going to bring some best practices that we're finding around the world. We'll share a lot of what YGAP is doing and some other program partners are doing, and also learn from each other. The third one is then implementation. It's great to know what's happening, you know, and Shankalita, you mentioned that we need to be very intentional and deliberate about this. Great, we definitely will be, but then you actually need to implement these, because you can have a great idea, you can actually find something, you have a strategy, but until you implement it, it just sits on that surface. So we're going to take you through that process of how can you actually implement what to make, what your dream is actually happen. We're conscious that within the 4 webinars, we're not going to be able to develop a big, broad, deep gender strategy for your organization. And this is okay. Something like this takes time. It's also going to take time to iterate and change and evolve depending on what is happening within your organization and the ecosystem. But what we want to give you in the last webinar is tools and the confidence to then take this away and continue to grow and implement it yourself. So we're going to take you through that process, give you the tools and the frameworks that you're going to need to develop a holistic gender strategy on your own, because we know there's only so much we can cover in these 4 sessions. In between the 4 webinars, we're going to be running seminars, and they will be slightly different from the webinars. Webinars will be a lot of the content and the frameworks that we talk about. The seminars will be highly interactive. So this is when we'll have the videos on, microphones on, and we're actually going to talk to each other about what's happened between that webinar and the first webinar. What came up for you? Some of you might be doing one-on-one sessions with us and learning things as we go and putting things together. This is the time to really tackle it. One of the things we talk about a lot is issues around gender and power. You have to be very conscious that it's very contextualized. However, you might be able to share learnings, and that's what we can do in these seminars. Again, we recognize that everyone is insanely busy and you're all running your own program, and not only that, but you will be involved in your one-on-one work with your program partners as well as the thematics. So during the seminars, we actually want to give you that time and space to work through this. We don't want to be able to just give you this information and then 6 weeks later, you're like, oh, we didn't do anything. That's not what we want to do, but we know how things get busy. So we want to be able to structure these seminars. So this is your time to tackle these as well, okay? The additional one-on-one support. So part of the thematic program is for us to be able to provide one-on-one support specifically for you. And so this is when you have the opportunity to set up times with Audrey and myself, up to 4 hours, and that can be split in however way works for you. But this is very bespoke support. So for example, if you really want to tackle the power dynamics in relation to attracting female entrepreneurs into your program, and that's all you want to do, there's only so much we can cover as a team within these webinars and the seminars, but we can then work one-on-one with you to develop some of this work. And how you do that is you sign up for this one-on-one support with Audrey on Slack, and we can coordinate that with you. So I did cover a lot, and you will have access to all of that, but at this stage, do you have any questions about the structure of the Gender and Power thematic program? And if any questions come up, by the way, please use the Gender and Power Slack channel. We'll have several points in this call where we'll ask you for questions. If you're anything like me, sometimes it takes 24 hours and then you're walking down the street and you remember, oh, I should have asked this. Don't feel like you have to wait till the next webinar. Please use the Slack channel. You're more than welcome, and you have full access to Audrey and myself for this.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, we're under the Gender and Power umbrella of what Frontier Incubators is working on It's a really exciting project called the Gender Lens Incubation and Acceleration Toolkit. That is an interactive toolkit that aims to support intermediaries in applying a gender lens to their organization, their program, and their ecosystem. So very much like the journey that we'll be taking you on over the next few months, this is just going to be a slightly more fleshed out version that will be publicly available. And the idea is it will have tools and frameworks to help accelerators and incubators in identifying issues within their organizations and then coming up with strategies and an implementation plan. It will also leave room for, as Manita was mentioning, it's very important, contextualization, exploration, innovation, and all the good things. So this is being delivered in partnership with the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. At the moment, we are in the research stage. So we are doing a lot of research around current practices of how different accelerators and incubators are actually applying a gender lens to their practice, to what they do. And so you might see a survey come through, I think in the newsletter or even on the Slack channels. We would love it if you could take the time to fill that in, even if you don't feel like you've kind of had a go at setting many strategies, that's completely fine. We just want to understand if you've had trouble getting started, why is that? What are those reasons? And if you have had the opportunity to actually establish strategies, what's worked and what hasn't. And ideally, these will go towards being case studies and examples within the toolkit so that everyone can have access to that knowledge and those insights, which is really, really helpful. There will be potential opportunities for you to engage with this work moving forward potentially. So we're still kind of locking in. There's potentially a pilot and some community activation work that might be interesting to you. So we'll just be communicating that as it becomes available through the Slack channel, through these webinars or seminars. So yeah, if you want to engage with it, that will be opportunities coming your way as well. But just wanted to mention that that's a piece of work that's going on. It's quite separate to the thematic, but it will integrate a lot of the tools and frameworks that you'll see within the next few months. So it's also a really great resource for you to kind of capture everything that we're talking about in a way so that once this thematic finishes, you have it as a resource that you can go back to and reference when you need to. So yes. Any questions around this toolkit? No.
And as we get more information, we'll use the Slack channel a lot as well. So yeah, keep your eyes on that. And as we get more information and news, we can update you. But this is really, really exciting. It's one of the first of its kind. So the FI team are really excited to be leading on this as well. Great. So what can you expect to get out of the program? You know, one of the things that is really important to me is that you actually get what you need from this as well, and we'll do our best to support you. So we've listed a few things that we hope you will get out of this, and we'll ensure actually that you do. But again, look at these and tell us if there's anything else that you'd like to get out of this program. So the first thing is we'll help give you tools and frameworks so you can actually really deliberately identify the complex power dynamics in relation to gender in the social entrepreneurship intermediary space. So there are new concepts as we've mentioned before, but as we start going through this and as we start meeting a lot more, as you start seeing the frameworks, you're going to develop those tools within yourself and your knowledge, but you'll also be able to impart this within your organization. We also want you to be able to identify at least one and up to two issues in within your organization, program or ecosystem that we actually work on, that we identify, that we develop strategies for, and that we develop an implementation plan for by the end of this program. So you have something really tangible to work with. You've gone through that process. You can then apply that to many different aspects of your organization and your work. We want you to be really comfortable and understand the key frameworks and tools that we are going to develop and distribute to you. And these will help you not just identify negative power dynamics, but also how to disrupt these negative power dynamics. And then following on from that, in that last webinar, you know, this is what we said, we're going to take you through this journey, and then how can you actually apply these tools and frameworks and apply the process for you to feel comfortable in designing that holistic gender strategy for your work. One of the things we keep saying is you have the power to do this, and hopefully you will feel that power throughout this thematic program, and you'll have the confidence to do this as well. We don't want this to be a constant touch and that you have to rely. That is not success for us. Success for us is when you have that knowledge within yourselves and you can then impart that to your entrepreneurs, to your stakeholders in the wider ecosystem. Great, fantastic. Any questions? Anything else that you think you would like to get out of the program, or in particular for yourself? And we can come back to this again. Great. Take a deep breath. We're going to do a big recap from what we did in Singapore. So look, thank you. Thank you for all the energy that was there in Singapore. It was, I think you could tell from my end, it was something that I felt really, really, energized by, and it was really impactful for me. And to be able to bring you on that journey and bring that whole room on that journey was so important. So let's do a quick recap because it's been a little bit of time. So what is a gender lens, and what does it mean to apply a gender lens? So gender lens, when we say we're looking through a gender lens, it's actually considering questions of power, and in particular power in terms of privilege and bias, and how it either advantages different gendered groups or oppresses them. So power can work in a really good way, and when it does, great. But when it doesn't, what can you actually do to disrupt this? And at the heart of when we talk about gender lens is actually really looking at different contexts, different work environments, different countries, different communities, and recognizing that there are very different nuanced ways that these operate and honoring that. And this is where, when we think about how to contextualize this, it is so important. One size does not fit all. When we're looking at power, privilege and bias, one of the things we want to do is apply it across different gendered groups. So we want to look at men, we want to look at women, we want to look at people who don't identify as a gender, we want to look at transgender. Now, I want to also highlight there are many other aspects that we can look at that can contribute to power dynamics, but this thematic and this work, we are focusing on gender. So what are the key concepts when we talk about gender and power? So the main thing that we kept going on about, and I honestly believe this, and we'll delve really deep into this, is that as an intermediary, as an incubator in the social entrepreneurship space, you have the power to disrupt these dynamics. Why is that? Because we work directly with the entrepreneurs, right? So we have that ability to support and influence these entrepreneurs. But from the YGAP point of view, and as with many of you, we also work really closely with the investors. And how are we going to actually translate that power from the investors to the entrepreneurs? That can come through us. And why is that important? It's important because at the moment in the world, and not in all contexts, but I can speak specifically from what we have seen at YGAP, is we know that the ability to create social impact sits with the entrepreneurs, the real people on the ground. That's why we back local entrepreneurs. That's our tagline. However, we do also know that when it comes to power and who holds the power to actually make a lot of the decisions, that sits at the investor level, right? Or the donor level. But unfortunately, while they hold a perceived power, they don't know in general how to create that maximum impact. So how can we make that change happen? And that's where the intermediaries and how we can actually impart that knowledge comes into play. So the key concepts again. So one is gender is not about men. It is not about women. It's about different gendered groups. When we're looking at power dynamics, we have to consider the concept of intersectionality. And what does that mean? So intersectionality considers things like race, religion, sex, language, color of skin, and how all of this can compound all the issues of power when we're looking at gender. And the example I give here, and I said it in Singapore and I'd like to repeat it again, is when, for example, if I go into a board meeting or a meeting, and often, as you know, I've worked with a lot of men in the construction industry, and I am not heard in that meeting. I don't know if it's because I'm a female. I don't know if it's because my skin is brown. I don't know if it's because I have a slight accent. I don't know if it's because they know that I'm Indian, right? So that intersectionality is really, really important to consider. And I'm telling you, it's really difficult. It's really difficult because they play really different parts in the countries that we work in. The next item is that one size does not fit all. So what works for us in YGAP Australia will not work in YGAP Kenya, does not apply in general to YGAP South Africa. And that's why we need to be very deliberate. Yes, use the frameworks, but really be intentional in how we look at it. Were there the 4 concepts I covered? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and then we actually want to think about why it's really important for us to be deliberate about this. And one of the things that keeps coming to me is when we're looking at gender and power, when any conversations happen around gender, everyone's really polite about it. Like you see something and you notice it, or you don't notice it, and no one really says anything about it. And we really feel that real change happens when you're being really deliberate about it. So notice when things aren't right. Really be intentional in noticing where the power dynamics are. Don't let that worry you, because you as an intermediary can actually do something about it. Was there any, so that's a really broad recap of everything, and we will keep coming back to this. Any other takeaways from any of you from what we covered in Singapore? Any things that were really bubbling away at you from Singapore that you'd like to discuss now? We are going to make you all put your microphones on and speak very soon, so giving you the heads up about that. So we've covered these concepts, and I'd just like to understand, and again, you can voice this to me now, or you can put it on a Slack channel, which is what would be helpful for you, either after this call or during this call or following on from this call, to be comfortable with these concepts. So the concepts around gender, the concepts around power and how we're addressing the negative dynamics, the concepts around power, privilege and bias. What would be helpful for you to be comfortable with these? Does anyone have any ideas or would like to share anything? Great. Okay, now we get into the nitty-gritty of it all. So what we want to do now, we're actually going to pause for a minute, because this is when we are going to work with you during this time and create space for you to actually think about what the pressing needs are when it comes to gender and power. So it's not on this slide actually, and I do touch on it before a bit later, but I want to raise this with you now. We want to add one other element to this, which is personally. What are the most pressing needs when it comes to gender and power in relation to yourself? Okay, this is really, really important because you are obviously on this call. It's obviously something that's important to you. Are there any pressing needs that is coming out of you as an individual? And the example I'd love to give you here is myself, right? So every day, nearly every day in every meeting in Australia that I have and anywhere around the world, I'm constantly very aware, or I'm made to be aware, that I am a female ethnic CEO, right? I'm very comfortable with that. But what I've noticed is people will always raise that as an issue. And so that is something that I think needs to be recognized, not just by myself, but whenever I'm presenting to a session, whenever I'm doing recruitment, whenever I'm facilitating, the dynamics in any environment that I am in at the moment, as the CEO of YGAP, as the female ethnic CEO of YGAP, has impacts. For example, a lot of entrepreneurs will come up to me in Bangladesh, and I know we've got some Bangladeshis here, and say, how do you do it? How can I do exactly what you're doing? And it's really interesting because to be honest, I won't know because I don't understand the Bangladesh context as well as the Bangladeshi entrepreneurs do. So that's a very personal thing that affects me as YGAP CEO, as Manita. And so that's something I'd love for you guys to consider if that's important for you. Then we go into your organization. You know, are there any things that are keeping you up late at night when we're looking at power dynamics relating to gender within your organization? And again, I'd like to share an example of YGAP. So YGAP's board at the moment, we have 9 board members, and at the moment, only 1 is female, not including myself, okay? And that is an issue, and that is an issue that we speak very openly about, and we're working really hard to disrupt that. But it's not easy, as many of you know. If you do have a board and advisory board, you can't just go and pick someone and put them on your board. Like we're following a really strong process to do that. What are your policies like within an organization? Are they favoring one gender as opposed to another? Then we'd love to look at your program, you know, and when I say program, this is the program that you deliver to your entrepreneurs, whether that's mentoring, whether that is the accelerator, whether that is the support program, the investment readiness that you provide to your entrepreneurs. What are the power dynamics in relation to gender that affect that part of your work? And so the 2 examples I'd love to give you just to get your juices flowing is selecting entrepreneurs for an accelerator. A couple of you have mentioned this, and we faced this in Bangladesh. We were finding that we were not attracting female entrepreneurs into our accelerator in Bangladesh. We went through a few iterations to get there, but we couldn't work out why this was happening, and we knew there were amazing female entrepreneurs in Bangladesh. So the first thing we did was to invite their families to meet us. And that didn't work. That still didn't attract anymore. It didn't give that comfort. And then over about a year, we now run YHER, which is a female-focused accelerator over there. The other thing is selections, right? So especially in YGAP, I remember probably about 12 months ago, we were running selections. So we get anywhere between 75 to 150 applicants for each cohort. Sometimes it's more when it's region specific. And I was invited to join the last part of the selection. And I saw that the 3 people who were involved in the selection were 25 to 35-year-old white Anglo-Saxon men. And again, there's no harm in that at all. But when you have such a homogenous selection panel, without a doubt, that's going to influence who comes into the accelerator. And as soon as you disrupt that, different questions get asked. So we then address that as well. And then we want to look at your ecosystem, because we aren't working in isolation here, and that's really important. We have that power to communicate between the entrepreneurs and the investors and the donors and anyone and the customers of the entrepreneurs, right? So we want to look at how we can interact. If we empower you guys, or if YGAP has a brilliant gender strategy, it will do nothing if the entrepreneurs don't speak that language and wider stakeholders in the ecosystem don't speak that language. And we see that very much here in Australia at the moment. People bandy around the term gender lens investing, and they think, oh, we've done that, or they'll come up to us and say, you've nailed the whole gender issue because you're running a female-focused accelerator. And we know as a group here, that's the tip of the iceberg. So what is it within your ecosystem that is that are some pressing issues? So I just want to pause there and let you think about this. And I'd love to actually understand who on this call actually has come with some pressing issues and pressing needs and things they want to talk about now. Is there anyone who's ready to do that now? And you just need to turn your microphone off and just let us know. No. Okay, great. Well, what we'd like to do is we'd like to actually spend 5 minutes and have a think about this. And we can do this as a group, or you can just write down a few things and few ideas in relation to your personal experience, your organization, program, or ecosystem, and just have a think about what they are. Maybe we'll just do that for 5 minutes, we'll have the screen on, we'll have our microphone on so you can talk to us, and then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. And try and do, remember how in Singapore we did that ideation session and we really pushed you to think about what is annoying you in relation to this. We'd love for you to think about some of those things, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes. How does that sound? I'm taking silence as a yes. Great. So we'll be here. We won't be on mute. And when there's about 1 minute left, we'll bring everyone back in. Yeah. So what we are going to do after these 5 minutes is actually share some of these. You don't have to share all of them, but we would really encourage if you could share 1 or 2 of what's bubbling away in your mind around personal, organization, program, and ecosystem. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We would love to hear from you. And I guess also before we do, just really encourage everyone to recognize that even though Audrey and I will be presenting a lot of this, we really would love some interaction from you guys as well. You know, recognizing that there might, because we're working around power dynamics, that you might feel that we have a particular power as the facilitators. That is not how we'd like you to feel at all. We are facilitators, but being really good facilitators means getting amazing ideas out from you guys, and we want to learn as well. So same as what we did in Singapore, there was a lot of discussion and ideation, and I know it's a little bit hard when it's a virtual setting, but we would really love it. And I'd love also for just around the issue of vulnerability and just, you know, being able to see your faces would be really valuable as well. And maybe we can consider that either today in this part where we're sharing ideas and what we want to talk about, but also moving forward. It just creates, I guess, a more beautiful space where we're all working together and being able to see our faces. Thanks, Avery. Wonderful. And hey, you know, let's make this a point where if you are noticing power dynamics within this actual thematic program, I'm inviting all of you to call it out, right? Because, you know, we all make mistakes. We all, and including myself, including Audrey. Audrey is brilliant at calling me out on things. And so is Avery. We've all worked together for a long time. So let's use this to test it, right? In a really sort of a safe environment. And because we are learning and we want to be able to do this together, I'm certainly not an expert in this. So thank you everyone for putting on your screens, except Ian, but that's okay, Ian. Just a little nudge if you do want to join. Okay, would love to hear from you, and up to you, who would like to go first?
Okay, I can.
Thank you, Shankalita.
Okay, just looking at the questions that you had put out there, what are your most pressing needs? One thing that came to my mind and one thing that has sort of bothered me at points of time over the last few months is certain remarks that are made by people in the organization. Again, it could be both men as well as women who are making, and that's not very it's not very nice to hear, whether it be for men or whether it be for women. So it always comes to my mind that we do have policies like safeguarding policy, we have policies for child protection, there are many other policies that your donors want you to have in place. Do you also have a policy where there are certain do's and don'ts where you can say that this is our gender policy? You know, so things that we sort of I think internalize, we expect those remarks. Like, for example, when the Me Too movement was very strong in this part of the world, so some unsavory remarks just made by the way kind of a thing. Again, both from men and women. Again, it's not specific, but it could hurt men or it could hurt women, right? So is there how do you call that out? Like, you know, it's being made not in the course of work, but it's being made at a workplace. So is that something that can be, I don't know if the right word is police, or it can be regulated? That's one. Quickly just talking about another one is that what I saw recently is, as I said, that one of the top 10 impactors, one of them is a woman-run enterprise. And in particular, when we were selecting her, what was really worrying for me is when my team, so she's 5 months pregnant. She doesn't have a co-founder. So what was really worrying was when my team actually said that she should not be part of the cohort, though her venture is great, she's great, her idea is great, because she's pregnant, and then who's going to be running the venture going forward? So, what would be, I think here important would have been, as I told the team, was to have a conversation around that with her, that it's a pregnancy or delivering a child is not like a disease that she's not going to come back. I'm sure that she can work around it, and she may already have a plan in place, because she also recognizes that she may have to take maybe a couple of months off, but obviously she's thought through this. So the immediate reaction was worrying for me, that as if that could be used for not taking her on as part of a program. Yeah, so these two like just come to my mind right away. Yeah.
Thank you. Would anyone like to respond to that? To either of those two that Shankalita raised?
I love what you said, Shankalita, as somebody who gave birth 17 months ago and started my own company. You do think about it, and so I love your response of like, that's a question and that's a conversation that needs to be had, and not making assumptions, whether it's about pregnancy or about any. I've actually seen this just really common with single founders in general, of assuming that they can't take something on versus having the conversation. And that feels like that's the cultural leverage point that you can start to influence with the team, is how do you ask questions versus making statements or assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Avery. And Avery always, oh, sorry, Hien, go ahead.
Yes, just want to share my, I wouldn't call it a pressing need, but I think that this is one of the challenge when I have the discussion around the gender and power here. So it seems like still up to now, the issue of gender and power has been discussion by women and among women. And in many cases, it's very difficult to start that conversation with men, especially those who are having power and have influence on the business, on business environment, ecosystem. I'm just taking an example that not very long ago, I was in a discussion with a senior investment banker who has decision-making power in a big organization that are sponsoring our program. And then when we raise issues about genders and the challenges that women face when they do business compared with men, it is not really convincing to him, because he considered, as an investment banker, he considered being men or women doesn't have any difference. If you're a good business, you are a good business. And if you have a good ideas, you will be heard. It doesn't matter whether you are man or woman. If you just raise your voice and you have a good ideas, people will listen to you. So they don't really see, he didn't really see the difficulty that women are facing. And another observation of mine is that in some cases, even women, especially more privileged women, seems to share the same perspective. For example, when I work with female-led startups, especially those who have like high growth technology-based, they are, all of them, if not, most of them are not, if not all of them, are educated in developed countries, come from wealthy family, they have all the conditions they need, so they don't really see the challenges being a woman. It is much more obvious when you work with the rural women in the less developed areas, so they would really have a gender disequality. But then in the urban setting, it's very difficult to see that challenge, that gender inequality. So that's why coming into the discussion about the need to have some specific support for women entrepreneurs, etc., especially when talking with donors and program sponsors, you really need to have a better evidence, to have a better evidence, data, real stories, to show that actually women are facing problems. And I'm aware that here we're not just talking about women and men, we are talking about gender and power. But in most of the case, at least in my culture, in my environment, men are still more advantageous and women are more, facing much less equality. So that's why I think one of the needs that I am still actively searching for is really evidence, data, real life case studies, or real life stories to show that women do have challenges, and if they get support, if the gender equality is promoted, then the impact would be much bigger than what we are having at the moment. So really this is something that keeps me not really awake at night, but this really attract my my attention in terms of getting evidence to tell a better story.
Yeah, absolutely, Hien. And that is something that we'll definitely work through in this thematic as well. It's something that I know Audrey's putting together when we're looking at global best practices and why they even exist in addressing this. And it's a constant battle, and those stats, I know exactly what you're saying, because they're so powerful, because often you can have a qualitative or anecdotal experience, but then as soon as you give a powerful stat that's referenced or backed by someone, it holds a lot of weight. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. But yeah, we can definitely look into that and make that a core part of this learning process as well. Just going, sorry, did anyone else want to respond to Hien? I'd just like to go back to Shankalita as well, because I had a couple of you, and look, this call is really just about chatting about these and raising these, and then we'll work together in between now and the next call on some of these. When you talked about the calling out policy, one of the things that we found is you can have a policy and you can have a standard, but what works really well is often having a mantra, right? And like when you're starting off a meeting, just addressing the fact that, you know, we are heading towards developing a gender strategy, right? So let's all call each other out on this. And I'd like to say that it's easier to do that in Australia than it would be in Bangladesh or Pakistan or in any other country, but it's actually not. It can be quite topical. What we found is the more we talk about it, the more it becomes, I guess, routine, and it becomes accepted, and it becomes, people feel more comfortable. And the natural part of it is top down, right? So if it's something that's important to you, you can raise it. But what we found powerful as well is having bottom-up support. So we have one of our team members, Levi, who's a very young new staff member, and when he came on board and he found out we were doing this, he's like, Manita, I want to be part of this. And when we're in donor meetings, he talks about our work in gender and power. He talks about why her, and it's beautiful to see. And they're the things that evolved naturally. That's not why we recruited him. We recruited him because he was the right person for the job. But it's having those conversations at multiple levels, but it's not easy, and we can talk about that as well. With the women falling pregnant and co-founders, again, such a common one. And as I said, I often think about Avery, because I met Avery, I think 2 or 3 months before she gave birth. And just the stigma associated with it. And that is different in different contexts. It's fascinating what it is like here in Australia compared to the US, compared to other in Bangladesh and Pakistan. It's really, really interesting, and I'm learning so much about that. And we'll talk a lot about that as well. So fascinating. So thank you for that. Who else is on the call? Did Komal drop off? Yeah, I think she did. Yeah. Ian, did you have any feedback or anything you'd like to contribute? Oh, Kazi, I can't see you on mine. Kazi, would you like to contribute? Would love to hear what's on your mind as well.
Hi, Manita. So
Hi.
I've been thinking about this. So I mean, there are 3 domains here, right? Organization, program, and ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And particularly, I would just like to highlight that one problem that Sankalita said, that you have been saying as well at Singapore and here, that at Bangladesh, it is tough to find women incubators. And just one small example. I mean, for our last cohort, I mean, in 2019, we have selected 5 enterprises to incubate, right? And within that cohort, we have 1 woman entrepreneur. And I've been hearing this buzz in my organization that selection was a pity selection, you know, that because of this affirmative action that BRAC takes in general, that is why probably she has been selected. And that's not the case. We have selected her idea to be, you know, her idea is brilliant, and that's why we selected her. But this is just one, you know, small thing that I've heard from my colleagues, unfortunately, that I just wanted to share with you that, you know, I mean, affirmative action also has a cost, you know, in terms of organizational promotion or organizational culture. So yeah, just this one thing, that's it actually.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. And I'd love to jump in, and then I'll invite everyone else to contribute if they'd like to as well. And I think there's a couple of issues. Is attracting more females, right? And making it sort of more accessible and I guess normal for a cohort to be equal of all genders. That is something that we face as well in Bangladesh, and we continue to face. And we can talk about how you can change your marketing strategies to attract these women, the kind of images you use, ambassadors around, and the mentors that you can use to attract these women. But that is possible. It's not easy, but it is possible. And sometimes it can work within your current program. And you can also test doing a female-focused one, as we've done. So we operate, and we're still learning different ways to attract them. So that's one issue I think you've identified. And the second one is that the notion that, you know, your team are thinking that this was a pity one. This often happens when it is something like this, right? When it's one against many, in the gendered environment and in many other things. With a YGAP board, it's the same thing, right? Like, why is that one woman there? Or she's only there to make up the fact that everyone else is male. Well, actually, no. So we have evidence as to why she was selected. We use criteria and metrics when we're recruiting, and they can be really, really powerful when you need to demonstrate why someone was selected and why they continue to be in the program and they continue to flourish in the program. And so we can talk about that. And, you know, you guys know I'm from an engineering background, so I'm all about numbers, but how can we use those kind of things to really add weight and depth to why we're doing what we're doing, and justifying that. So that's really great. Thank you so much. Very conscious of time, and I know we started a bit late because of technical issues. This is our first one, so we'll definitely get better at this as well. So thanks for that. That was really, really insightful, and it certainly got, you could see me scribbling things down, it certainly got us thinking. So we're just going to wind this up and then have some time for questions as well. We just want to make sure we cover everything as we keep going. Would love to, and you can think about this based on one of the last slides, is how would you like the webinars and seminars to be run? If you have any ideas, do let us know. So for example, one of the things I suggested is, you know, when we do have something like this next time, it would be great to have everyone's videos on and have a really interactive approach, especially during the seminars. How would you like to work with each other? We have the Slack channel. If you have any other ideas of how you'd like to work with each other, do let us know. And highlighting as well that Audrey and I are fully accessible for you, or to you, I should say. And this is a big priority for us, and we'd love to work with you on this. And also what you can expect from YGAP between now and the next webinar. Did you want to cover that?
Yeah, just in terms of also how you would like the webinars and seminars to run, it can be a bit of everything. It can be that, you know, if we're recognizing that genderland investing is something that everyone loves as a topic, then we could potentially get an expert and put aside 20 minutes for them to answer your questions more specifically. So there's ways to make this so that it is super valuable for you, and we just want to make sure that you get the most value. So just have a think about it. It can be, we'll do a couple of Slack messages to make sure we prompt you before the next webinar, because we really want to make sure that we can prepare it in a way that it will be very interactive and engaging for you.
Yeah, and we've also been speaking to, with all the work we've been doing, we've already highlighted we're doing these webinars and seminars, and we've got a few people who would love to come and do maybe even 15 minutes on what they're doing, and that will also help you. Some of them are the program partners that you worked with in Singapore and that you're working with now, and they have that really niche expertise that they can share. So key takeaways, we'll zip through these, conscious of the time. And again, you've got this one. Understanding that Gender Lens is looking at many aspects, but in particular, we're looking at the power dynamics and how, in particular, power, privilege, and bias either advantages a particular gendered group or oppresses them. So that's what we'd love for you to think about. And I think you guys have got this, like you guys are saying this back, which is wonderful. The concepts we want you to consider around gender, and again, I reckon we've got this now, so we don't need to say this, which is gender is not only about females or males, it's about all gendered groups. And as intermediaries, we have the power if we're deliberate about this. Let's consider intersectionality in all facets of our work, but especially when we're looking at gender and power, and know that not one size fits all, especially when it comes to strategies and implementation. But let's create a space so that we can learn from each other. Why is this important? Well, we know where the power lies in actually delivering social impact. We also know now, at the moment in the world, there's a big gap between where the power lies and the people actually making that impact, and we can do something about that. And in Singapore, I also mentioned that at the moment, there's a big trend, and that is going, I believe it's going to stay, that access to capital is going to increase when organizations, including us, including the entrepreneurs, have a very deliberate focus and have a very deliberate gender lens across their work. We mentioned some amazing stats last time. This is a great thing. So we're, on one hand, we're saying that people holding all the wealth shouldn't control the power, but hey, if they're doing really good things with that wealth, let's actually tap into that.
Next steps. So just next steps. The first webinar will be on the 21st of March. So that's a bit over a month away. So again, for questions, communications, if we're going to send you any documents, it will be through the Gender and Power Slack channel. Feel free to, reach out to Manita or I separately on Slack or through the Slack channel if you have any questions or want to suggest how you would want the webinars to run or the seminars. Also wanted to remind that the seminars won't be recorded, so that's why it'll be a really great way to get more interactions and go a bit deeper some of the issues that are that might be more sensitive to talk about within your organizations. If you need any additional support, again, you can contact us anytime. We're here, and you have the option to schedule up to 4 hours of one-on-one support. And if you want to do that, just find me on Slack. I'm just Audrey Weiger, and let me know, and we'll find a time that works for you for us to dig a little bit deeper into all of this content.
Great. And lastly, I really want to emphasize this from all of us, that this is about you. This isn't just us talking to you or at you. This whole thematic and a lot of every part of the Frontier Incubator's work is about you and for you. So let's work together. And this is where I really want to emphasize, we want to deliver work, and we want to deliver ideas and concepts and frameworks that's going to be relevant for you in your space. So thank you. We will leave it at that. A couple of minutes, if you do have questions, just please put your microphone off, and maybe if you don't, let's just have our videos on for 1 second so we can all say goodbye and have a great rest of the day or night.